Okay, so we're holding a Siman Kuf Hey, Taaruvot. What we'll do tonight is do a quick review of what we did on Tuesday, the Musagim, the concepts of Kavush, the various circumstances that concern Kavush. And then we'll go on to another concept called Kli Rishon, and after that, Kli Sheni. As you can tell from the very beginning of the Siman, there are various ways something can become Asur. We've been speaking about Taaruvot, mixtures, where we have a difficult time identifying the Isser, where the Isser is Be'ein, or there is at least Tam, and Bittul is required to eliminate the problem of the Isser. Whereas in Siman Kuf Hey, at least in the very beginning, we're seeing Heter becoming Asur as a result of some sort of contact. Not necessarily Bishul, not necessarily Taaruvos. One is Kavush. And what's Kavush? Kavush means that Heter was sitting in Isser for maybe 24 hours, maybe less, maybe more. The fact is that it was enveloped in liquid. Heter was immersed or soaked in a rotev, in a liquid that was Asur. And it sat there. So there's no cooking, there's no heat. And the question is, what now? Did it absorb? Is it possible for the heter to absorb the Isser just by sitting in it? And the answer is yes. Chazal tell us that kavush kemevushal. It has a similar effect. It may take longer, but in the end it does produce a similar effect to bishul as far as the Isser being absorbed into the heter. Even though we did say that in Basar v'chalav it will not result in a transgression min Torah, because the Torah requires real bishul Basar v'chalav for it to be asur min Torah. And in this case, if Basar and chalav are in the status of kavush, then there will be an Isur D'Rabbanan, not an Isur D'Oraisa. In other words, you can't have it, but there will not be a real Isur D'Oraisa because it's not real bishul as far as Basar v'chalav is concerned. So in Kavush you can have various scenarios. You can have either Heter falling into Isser and being there for a while, or an Isser falling into Heter. The sauce is Heter, the Isser, the piece of Isser, whether it's a piece of cheese or regardless, the Isser is sitting in Heter for a certain amount of time. Or the third scenario is where you have two gufim or two gushim, two solids, one heter and one isser, that are both being soaked at the same time in some liquid. Let's call it a neutral liquid, water. So the two are together, but the two are being soaked in a solution. How's that? That's even.
No, if it's just a problem.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, solution implies a chemical, right? More than one.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so even though this is not a class on chemistry, nonetheless, we do need to analyze the chiluk, the differences between the various liquids. Because apparently, there does seem to be differences. If one goes through the Mishnayos and one goes through the Gemaras, there does appear to be differences between things being immersed. Some are more delicate, some absorb faster, some don't ever absorb. There does appear to be differences, but in learning in the Halacha, Lemaisa, from what we understand from the Mechaber, we don't differentiate too much between the various liquids or between the various products. For the most part, if food items become kavush, they present a problem. In other words, the kavush presents a problem. Even if it's in water. Yes, even if it's in the water. Will it make a difference if it's in some other liquid? Yes. Tzir and chometz apparently are more of a serious problem. The acidity, the salt in those liquids, right, apparently has the effect that kavush in water would have in a ma'is la'is, in chometz, and in seer, in brine, or in vinegar. It may happen in less time. Now what's interesting about this is that if you follow Rashi literally, Rashi seems to be saying that the whole concept of kavush is only in the chometz and seer. We're not sure if that's what he exactly holds. or he's just giving us an example of a kavush. But if you infer from what the words, from what Rashi brings down from those words, he says chometz tzir. So the halacha we hold that kavush is even in water, not just chometz and tzir. It will produce an effect that will, of course, make the heter aser, just like bishul. And when we say just like bishul, what are we saying? We're saying that the whole thing becomes aser, not just kedei klipa. The whole thing. We're saying it's like bishul. But the good news is that if it's less than the me'es le'es, which according to some shittas, that's the required amount of time for it to be kavush, if it's in water. If it's less than me'es le'es, then you're okay. All you need is a hadacha. You can rinse it out, or take off a little klipa, and then you're fine. Well, sure. Because
it's changing its taste.
Right, we're talking about taste here. We're talking about it's absorbing. It's absorbing the be'in, it's absorbing the flavor, it's absorbing something, whatever it is. Right. When you pickle something, it's not going to taste like the original. We see it. The question is the time. So some say that it happens in 24 hours, and we saw another shita that says it happens in 3 days. But we're going to go with the shita, that it happens in the me'es le'es, in 24 hours. And we hold that it also happens in plain water. Even though, by the way, I may not have mentioned that, there seems to be an agreement that when it comes to basar, if basar is being kavush, meat that's being kavush, there are some that say that it will become kavush in anything. In other words, regardless of what liquid you use. In other words, that even Rashi, or those that say only chometz and tzir, would say, yes, basar, meat, kavush in every way possible. I guess because of what it's made out of. In other words, it's more delicate, it can just easily absorb. There appears to be a chumrah more in basar and meat than in everything else.
But since we or do we?
We do. Remember we said tzir and chometz, the shear of tzir and chometz, according to the Mechaber in this Siman at least, is kedei sheyitnu ala or v'yartiach.
So would that also apply then to, if we're comparing meat
right.
to something else in brine?
No, you still need a shear of me'es le'es.
By meat?
Yeah.
If it's something other than brine, other than tzir.
Right. You still always need the shear,
so
right.
Comparison, so when we say everyone agrees that any liquid will function to it just like,
yeah.
then this does not refer to the halacha that in real brine, in real tzir, meat would also probably become pickled after the sheer amount of
No, tzir and chometz, even though we find that the shach is meichel on chometz, and there are some that may be distinguished, like the Magen Avraham make a distinction between strong chometz and light chometz, but those two appear to be definitely quicker in bringing about absorption into an item.
And by meat, do we always say this quick?
By anything.
No.
We don't, yeah.
Even if it's not chometz,
yeah.
and it's not by meat,
no.
do we always say quicker?
No, we don't.
So when we say that meat is looked upon as in all situations as though it was being soaked in or chometz,
right.
This only goes with respect to the opinion of those who otherwise would hold that it would not.
That other liquids wouldn't matter.
Right, but we don't paskin like that.
We don't paskin anywhere like that.
So for us,
yeah.
Whether we say that meat...
Because remember, we did also say that as it is, there's questions about some things not being affected by kavush.
Okay.
If you look at the various mishnayos and the various gemoras, it's just that we're looking at the maskana.
Maskana, we say that everything is affected.
Everything is affected, almost any food item.
And meat does not have a special status regarding the maskana.
Right, because if you go by the original deahs, there's even a deah that holds that kavush only happens with chiltis, I believe it says there. In other words, if you're making the kavush with something sharp,
right?
So that produces.
But we don't hold like that.
But we don't hold like that. So even according to those that would say you would require something sharp, by basar you wouldn't.
According to them.
Right, according to them. But we don't hold like that anyway.
So we're machmir lahafila.
Anyway, yes. In conclusion, yeah, we're looking at the conclusion, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch does. Takes everything that is in the Gemara and the Mishnayos for the most part, Rishonim, analyzes what everyone says, and he has to give us a psak, halacha, if there were differences of opinion, which many times there are.
I just wanted to verify that with respect to the distinctions that we introduced,
yes, that's
were
correct.
only relevant for those opinions that we
That's
don't
correct.
hold by.
That's correct. Right.
According to our opinions,
Yeah, it makes no difference.
Meat, everything would be just like meat.
That's right. So even though we said that Rashi appears to be saying that it only applies to something sharp like chometz and seer, we see clearly from the Rosh, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch, the kavos is shayach in every liquid. And the amount of time that is brought for those liquids, except for chometz and seer, is a me'es le'es. In the event you don't have a me'es le'es, so we said it would be enough to have hadocha or to have a klipa. It would be fine. You wouldn't have to worry about it. Only if it was there 24 hours. Now, by chometz and seer, we said that it's nesa kedei klipa right away. If in other words, if it was not there the required amount of time for the few minutes, it was only there for 30 seconds, you would also require kedei klipa. It's a chumrah because we say that the chometz and the seer begin to do their work pretty much right away. Also, we also said that if you have two things that are dry, remember, that are touching each other, and there's very little liquid or moisture between them, nothing's going to really happen. If anything, all you need to do is rinse them out. Just touching without any soaking in the liquid, any heat involved, does not really do anything. So if you have meat touching a piece of cheese, farmer's cheese, regardless, makes no difference. They've been touching for a whole week. So what? Nothing happened. The balabosa comes all concerned, Look, they've been sitting on top of each other in the fridge. I didn't realize it was meat. Whatever. I thought it was a chocolate cake.
Happens to me all the time.
Yes. Anyway, next to each other. But there's no heat. There's no kavush. There's no tzir. Right? There's no reason to make of it a problem. But you do need to rinse it out. That's all. An important condition, however, in kavush was that in order for it to be true kavush, it would have to be continuous. Remember, the 24 hours have to be continuous. What would interrupt it? One or two things. Either you just took it out, for whatever reason. You took it out. Once you took it out, you've broken the retzef, the continuity required to make it kavush. Or if you change the water, makes no difference. Changing the water, that would also interrupt the continuity of kavush, and it would be a leniency here in this case, right? We're trying to say that this is going to be kavush, it's going to be asr, and this is very interesting. That if it was interrupted somehow, it would not become asr. Obviously, you put it back, and it eventually will become 24 hours, so it will eventually become asr. But at least for now, the 24 hours that it was there because of tziruf, in other words, you're combining the times. It was there in the morning and it was there in the evening, but in between for half an hour, I got busy and we did something with that piece. We took it out, we looked at it, or we started doing something to it, and it was not soaking. So you don't have the 24 hours.
20 hours plus 20 hours is mutter.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't combine those two times.
For the interruption, even a momentary interruption.
Apparently, I haven't seen any shear about interruption.
And how far must it be?
Even if it's a momentary interruption. Now, obviously, what I would say, which is mashma from the halachas later on by heat, so that one may want to be machmer, depending on what the situation is. That if it was just taken out for a minute, but it was there altogether 25, 26 hours, depending on what it is, it could be that one should be machmer if it wasn't a long time.
Well, basically, when you take liquid, some of the liquid being on it. So during it is still on it, it will probably still affect it.
It doesn't say that, but that's
just saying,
nobody says that. So I don't want we don't want to make more chumras than necessary. But perhaps, depending on the circumstances, if it's something that is not a big loss, that you may want to be machmer. If it was just a very slight, I don't know, moment for a moment. But we will see when we talk about the next seif. We will see where the chumras apply. Here,
how much does it have to go all the way, or is it part of it?
No, all the way. All the way, sure.
When you say to be machmir, you talk klipa, you take it from saying...
No, that you would need to do regardless, because if it was less than 24 hours, you would need to rinse or take off a klipa. The question is, does the whole thing become usher just because I took it out for a minute, 60 seconds? So apparently it does make a difference. In other words, that it interrupts the whole thing. That's what the halacha says. The amount of time it doesn't say. So we do have something to rely on. At least something to rely on. I mean, you can always be machmer, but you have something to rely on in case you want to be mekel if there's a hefsed. Oh, you know, no, you would not be allowed to. You should not be.
Remove it, but you can't put it back.
You cannot be make something kavush in Isser. Right. I mean, what would you want to do that for?
I know.
Yeah.
So you can remove it if you discover it's in. You can remove it, but you can't put it back.
Right. The Aruch HaShulchan, however, says what would happen if there is a hefsek in the kavush and seer. He says, I think he remains with the tzorech on what would happen then. You know.
He wants to be more machmir.
What is that?
If there was a hefsek in the, he wants to be more machmir.
He wants to be more machmir, he says, possibly. You understand the question? The Aruch HaShulchan? If it's sitting in brine, which is going to take a few minutes to become usher anyway, and here there was a hefsek, can you combine the two times? What's the idea behind? What's the reason why he says so? The reason why he has his doubts is what we're going to see in the next halacha, which we already covered, and that is something called pipua. When a piece of meat is sticking, let's say a piece of meat is sticking out of the water, okay? Half is inside, half is sticking out. Remember that? That's in the Ramah, the next halacha. What's the din? The din is, even though the Ramah brings down both shitas, the one say it's asur and one say it's mutar. The question is, why say it's asur? What's happening chemically that we should say that it's asur? And the answer is, it's similar to what happens in Melicha, in the case of Melicha. When you have something that is fatty, especially fatty, but even if it's not fatty, there is something called piyapua, that the liquids, or the blood, in the case of Melicha, travels from one end to the other. In other words, it can happen through some sort of, not combustion, that's not what we're talking about here, but through the process of kavush, of Melicha, of heat. That's what happens in Bishul, is that something travels from one end to the other. And you remember the case of cham miksos cham kuloi, which is a little different idea, where you put the spoon, right, into the hot pot. But even though the whole spoon is not in the hot pot, just half of it is, but cham miksos cham kuloi, heat travels. Metal is a good conductor of heat, right? So therefore, that which is sticking out may be a problem too, even though only a small piece of the spoon is inside. But the whole thing is one piece of metal. So there is something about traveling, whether it's heat traveling, or whether it's the flavor, the tam, or something in the bottom of the piece that somehow can travel to the top. Something causes it to travel. But it seems to be that everybody may agree in Melicha, or in sleep, by the way, in roasting, or especially if something is fatty, that something can travel from one end to the other. Even though, in other words, even though not all of it is in contact, even though not all of it is touching, it could be that through the process, the heat, whether it's regular heat or heat of salt, it could travel from point 1 to point 2, from point A to point B. But when we're talking about kavush, how does kavush happen? Kavush happens in a very slow way. It takes a me'es la'es for it to happen. And since kavush takes so long, 24 hours, maybe pipua never happens because of that. In other words, the nature of kavush does not yield or result in a piyapua. It doesn't have the strength. Pipua is something very powerful. We're saying it goes from the bottom and goes to the top. Something is causing it to go from the bottom to the top. So if you have a piece of meat or whatever, heter, in kavush, and half of it is sticking out, like the Ramah brings down, it should be mutar. And we're mekel. We are mekel like the second sheet, as we said.
With respect to the half sticking out.
With respect to the half that's sticking out. You can cut that half, and that half is going to be mutar. Just the bottom half is going to be asur. So therefore, based on...
Without any.
Yeah, without anything. Based on that, I mean, you may want to wash the edge that was touching the bottom. Yeah. Based on this concept of how pipua works and why kavush is not strong enough, that's why the Aruch HaShulchan has this suffix about seer, interrupting the process of kavush by seer. Tzir is powerful. It happens within a few minutes. If I interrupt it, maybe that interruption doesn't really do that much to it because it's tzir as opposed to water. Water takes a long time. If I don't have that momentum, maybe we can use that word, of momentum, that continuity, maybe it just won't happen. But with tzir, maybe it will. So if it was sitting in whiskey, as we saw, that was another possibility, or in something, a dover chorif, and it got interrupted and then it went back in, maybe we would be able to combine. So he remains with a tzorechiyun. Tzorechiyun means that he does not give a psak, but he appears to be wanting to be strict.
Wouldn't the Rabbanan have tasted it to see? It's not a difficult thing to do. You cut it off and taste it.
To that piece, if it actually traveled,
Yeah.
there was used a kefela. Yeah.
No,
Well,
with
the
a
opposite.
kosher-
Yeah.
If it had traveled, since we permit cutting it off and eating
Right.
it, so we would notice if it had. But we're eating it.
Well, in the end, we will know. We will know. You'll taste it. You'll know if it traveled or not. But there doesn't seem to be anybody who has said it has been tried, because every food is different. Remember we said that? It's very difficult to do that because every food does react differently. That's a fact. We're just being machmir here and saying kavush applies across the board. But in reality, the metzius, the reality is that everything reacts differently in kavush. So it's very hard to say, what, it will depend. Well, it depends what you... We're going to have too many halachas. It depends if it was an orange, depending if it's a tomato, depending, we tested it. Here it took 6 minutes. Here, it's just... So the halacha is very simple. And we're lenient with the piece that's outside. We don't have to worry about it. Apparently, from what they've tested, perhaps they never detected anything. Then we went on to kavush bekelim. The kavush also applies in some ways to kelim. What does that mean? That if the keli was asur, right? Somehow you didn't realize it. You took out a pot in the kitchen of the hotel, and you thought it was the kosher pot of the caterer, and by mistake this happens. The guy brought you a pot from the other side of the kitchen, and you didn't know until later. It was treif, and it was a ben yoima. Talking about a treif pot ben yoima. You know what ben yoima means. It was used that day, and you're soaking your tartar sauce that you're making. I don't know. You're making a sauce, right? A roitev. So the roitev is heter, the pot is iser. This sauce, if it sits there in the pot for 24 hours, will become asur. The other way around, if you had iser sauce, the guy poured an iser sauce into your pot, and it sat there for 24 hours, the pot will become asur. It will be boleya from the kavush, from the sitting there, no heat, the blias of the iser. So that's as far as kavush and kelim is concerned. Now, there's a problem with all this. What was the problem? The Shach and Taz point out, well, wait a minute. I can understand an Isser making the pot Asur. Okay, the Isser sitting in the pot, we understand that. But we have a problem with what the Isser Beheter, by the way, says, that even if the Heter was sitting in the pot for 24 hours, it's going to be Asur too. But that pot is going to, by that time, be an Eino Ben Yoimai. Remember that? That pot, after 24 hours, is going to become Pogum. So why is the Isser Beheter saying Kovash and Kelim both ways? Heter in a pot becoming Asur from the pot? I can understand Isser in the pot becoming Asur. Okay, but the Heter should become Asur from a pot? It's going to take 24 hours for it to absorb. By that time, it's going to be Pogum. So the Pri Megadim and others, I think the Prach Brichoder say, wait a minute, the Kovush effect happens before the Begima of Eino Ben Yoimai. It becomes Kovush a few minutes before. It only becomes Pogum after Me'es Le'es, and the Kovush is Me'es Le'es. So that's one good explanation as to why the Isser Veheter does not differentiate and says Kovush and Kelim regardless. He only wanted to be lenient, by the way, with metal kelim, because he learns that from yain nesach, from wine, there's a machloikis there, and it appears to be that with metal, there may not be kavush. It just doesn't work. Remember we spoke about glass? Glass would be good. Glass would be easy too. It's not, doesn't absorb. But we're machmir as far as all the kelim are concerned, especially kli cheres. They say there's a new one that absorbs right away. So that's a very good explanation that the Pri Megadim and the Pri Chodesh give to explain why the Isser V'Heter was makpid or was machmir, even in heter sitting in a pot of Isser, even though it's going to take 24 hours. The pgima will only happen after 24 hours, whereas the coverage is happening before.
But wouldn't that also work itself, the issue of coverage?
Yeah.
Most food is, if you don't intend to pick it,
The food doesn't become pogrom, remember, right? Food doesn't become pogrom overnight, unless maybe it's certain very delicate foods. If you leave them out and they're cooked and they're raw, certain things become spoiled after leaving it out for a while, depending on the temperature of the room.
The food is going
Right.
liquid.
Right.
Most times it's going to because it's not something that you, unless you're British, you're not going to want to spoil everything.
Right.
In college.
Yeah, but that's not a real pgima, no. And every food takes different amount of time to spoil. Here we're talking about the blias in the keli. Blias in the keli become overnight pogrom. And remember when we spoke about me'es la'es, we spoke about the ikar. Pgima occurs because of nighttime. So there's even a shita that you don't even need a full me'es la'es based on that. So we spoke about the chaticha sticking out, that we're lenient, like the shita that says that you can cut the piece that was sticking out. The Aruch HaShulchan seems to be saying, however, that if it's a kavush b'tzir, we're not going to be mekel. This is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says that if it's kavush and tzir, we are going to say it's mefapea. Similar to what the Shach says. The Shach wants to say that if this is a piece of meat that is shomen, it's fatty, shomen causes pipua to happen. A fatty piece of meat does allow pipua to occur. The Aruch HaShulchan says, I don't understand the Shach. Kavush is not strong enough. The process of kavush, it takes so long. The shomen should not make a difference. Therefore, let's not make a distinction between shomen and not shomen. But the Shach does. But not everybody does. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, I don't understand why he does that, because kavush, in water especially, happens over 24 hours. It's so slow to say that it's going to be mefapea because it's a little shomen. So he says, it's never mefapea, but it's in Sir and the Choymes, yes. Sir and the Choymes is so powerful that there we can suspect that it's mefapea. So therefore, in Sir and Choymes, which the Ramah doesn't speak about, as far as half sticking out, I don't think the Ramah doesn't make any distinction. He just says piece sticking out in Kavisha. Some are aser and some are matir. But the Aruch HaShulchan says if it's sincere, you should be machmer, because it is maybe mefapea. Then we went on to Safek Kavush. Safek Kavush, if Kavush means Doraisa, then Safek Doraisa Lechumra. But what is a Safek Kavush? So we spoke about two possibilities. One possibility is you have two pieces. One was Kavush and you don't know which one it is. That's a Safek Doraisa Lechumra. But what if it was Kavush but you don't know how much? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was only 10 hours. You have a Safek regarding the amount of time. I think the Taz on that. Yeah, the Taz. The Taz says that we're going to go according to the Chazakah. What's the Chazakah? It was mutter till now. You sometimes are allowed to put something on the Chazakah. Remember the case of Nishpach? We learned by Taaruvot, it was spilled. You don't know if you had 60 or not. Right? But you have to know that you had at least roiv.
Right.
Why?
That was what it means.
Well, why? It's a suffix. Because there you had a real isser. So you can't say that over there. Whenever you have a real isser, you can't just say, well, it was mutter till now. Here you can, because it was mutter till now. There's no isser here. Not yet. I don't know if it ever became an isser. Whenever you have something that is usser, you just have another suffix about it. You can't just say, go by the chazaka. It's usser. The isser is here.
The chazaka says?
Yes, exactly. So whenever you have an isser, you can't go by the chazaka of the heter necessarily. Similar to a mikveh, a guy went into a mikveh, he was tameh. Oh, I don't know if there was arboim so or not. You were tameh. That's a suffix. You have a doubt about the mikveh. What's your chazaka? You're tameh. You go do it over again. And by women, by Niddah, that could be an issue too, because she's also Tmeya. Oh no, I forgot to take out my ring, I forgot to take out my lipsticks, my nail polish, things that can be a chatzitza, could be a problem. Sometimes we make the woman go back if she realizes that she didn't do it right. Sometimes we don't have to make her go back if she's already gone. But sometimes it could be a big issue. It may not, she's Tmeya, that's her chazaka. Here, the Taz saying the chazaka is its mutter. Maybe we just, so he's saying, not everybody agrees with the Taz. They're just saying this would be a regular suffix kabush, and it would be also the chumrah. But the Taz would say, no, but maybe this kind of a suffix, it would be okay. Why? Because maybe it wasn't there for 24 hours, and the piece is mutter. So why don't we just say, go by the chazaka, and be lenient with the suffix as a result of that. It's not a real suffix, the raisa the chumrah. So that's what the Taz says about that. Okay, now let's go over to another seif Beis. This is a fascinating area. Seif Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, it's a long Siman. And in this seif, what the Mechaber does is that he discusses various degrees of heat. We've covered kavush. Now we're going into another scenario of something becoming usher as a result of heat, but not real bishul. Here the Mechaber is talking about Kli Rishon Shayat Soledes Boy. He will be talking about Kli Sheni. We will be talking about Irui also. Various degrees of heat. And you do come across with this questions of heat in Basar B'Cholav. Tzadik Beis, Tzadik Hey, and also in Hilchas Dam, Samaches, when somebody's pouring hot water over chickens, he wants to take off the feathers the easy way. Got to be careful with that if they haven't been salted. It's a problem. It's a big problem. Rav Ovadia Yosef has a whole shaila, has a whole dion on a chicken that was salted with her feathers on, which is a different question altogether. Chicken that was salted, but with her feathers on. Did it work or not? He's mater behefse meruba, I believe. The salt may have worked itself through, but then there's the other question that I mentioned, and that is the pouring hot water. I mean, you're going to cook up the chicken, and you won't be able to use Melicha afterwards to take out the blood, right? It's going to be a problem. So, how hot does the water have to be for it to be a problem? So that's in Samaches. And in Basar B'Cholav, this question of Irui, of Yatzoledes also comes up here and there. Other than that, where do you see this? In Hilchos Shabbos. That's where you really see it. Bishul is one of the melachas, right? That are forbidden on Shabbos. So what he does here in this seif is discuss the various situations that involve heat, but not complete bishul. When do they pose a problem? Okay, so maybe before I read the seif, I'll just give you an introduction. Blias and plitas, right? Blias means something that is absorbed. Plitas means something that is emitted. What heat is required for this to happen? We're done with kavush for now. What heat is required? How much heat is required to bring about a belia or a plita? And this could be either in a situation where Isser falls into Heter, or Heter falls into Isser, or Heter and Isser are together, right? Once you have a certain amount of heat, it's going to be boleach from the Isser. Once you have Heter and Isser falling into a liquid, for example, you're going to have both belia and plita, possibly. And here, by the way, I have something interesting to tell you. In Kli Rishon, Yatzoledes, we're no longer going to make an exception for Basar B'Cholav. Here, Basar B'Cholav will be a problem too. Why? Because as far as the bishul is concerned, for Basar B'Cholav, Kli Rishon, that is Yatzoledes boy, is considered bishul for Basar B'Cholav purposes. And when we say Kli Rishon, that is Yatzoledes boy, what do we mean? We mean the pot that was once upon a time on the fire that is no longer on the fire. It doesn't have to be on the fire. When we call something a Kli Rishon, we're calling it even though it's no longer on the fire. It was removed from the fire. You removed the cholent pot from the crock pot. You removed the soup from the blech or from the fire. It's still a Kli Rishon. And you better believe it's going to be Yatzeledis boy for a while. Right? That's Kli Rishon. The first one.
Okay, yeah. You can put your finger in it. We tried it out one.
That's correct. With Yatzeledis people,
Seven or 8 seconds.
with Yatzeledis people make a big mistake sometimes. They think it means, "Oh, I can't touch it." That's not Yatzeledis boy. Yatzeledis boy is even less than that. Yatzeledis boy is for the baby's stomach, for it to get burnt.
We tried it out. We could leave our index finger in the. There is a temperature. I don't remember what the temperature.
Yeah, I
is.
don't recall right now.
And
Maybe
if
we'll
you
get
go by
into
the
that
temperature,
next
we
time.
measure the temperature and we put our finger in. It just feels.
Yeah,
You could easily.
you could leave it in, but it's not very comfortable.
After 6-7 seconds, it'll be present.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
You tried it out?
accumulates, they hit it.
Okay, so Elon is involved in experimenting
We had
lately.
okay. Yeah, it was a field day. And,
Yeah, okay.
experiment.
Yeah,
In the call out, we took to
yeah. So with Basar B'chalav, it would be awesome in the Torah. This would be considered the bishul as far as Basar B'chalav is concerned. So the halacha is like this. Choim, heat of Kli Rishon, Shayatzu Ledes boy, is mevashel, we hold, and it's maflit and mavliya. That's the halacha. We're going to read it inside. And therefore, if one removes a pot from the fire, it still has that koach, as long as it's Yatzu Ledes boy, right? That it's hot, you cannot leave your hand too long in the heat. That it has the koach of being maflit and mavliya. Why did I say maflit and mavliya and not mevashel? Because some things cannot be cooked very, very, very well if it's no longer in the fire. Salt is one of them. Salt requires a tremendous amount of heat to cook. Bull's meat requires a lot of heat to cook. Some things are called kalei bishul, things that are very easy. They may even cook in a kli sheni. Okay, and we'll talk about that another time. But Kli Rishon does have koach, does have strength. It does emit and it does swallow. It does absorb. Now, what we will possibly see another time is there's various chilukim, various distinctions, additional, besides Kli Rishon that is no longer Elisha. One of them is called a matzeket. Matzeket in English, oh, all right, I thought you knew. Matzeket is in Spanish it's a cucharon, a ladle. I just remember the English word. A ladle, right? Ladle, I think, yeah. To take out. Matzeket in Hebrew, one in Spanish, cucharon. A big spoon. Anyway, what's the din of the matzeket, of the ladle? You put the ladle into the soup that is hot, and you take it out. Now, let me just tell you, in Hilchos Shabbos, you should never put the ladle into the pot if it's sitting on the fire. Why? The halacha is that, depending on what you're cooking, some of the things may not have cooked well, or are not yet cooked, especially Friday night. If you start coming with a ladle and start moving things around, you may be cooking them. Moving around the potatoes. People like to have char on Friday night. Maybe it's not fully cooked, depending on when you put it on. So never take out from the Kli Rishon if it's al ha'esh. Liquid maybe. You're always better off moving. If you have a blech, you can move it, and then move it back if you want to put it back. Because once you've removed it from the fire, you won't be able to put it back, right? That's what in Hilchos Shabbos. So if you remove it, don't take out with the ladle when the pot is on the fire directly. Especially directly. I mean, if you have a blech, you can move it. So the question is, what's the din of the matzeket, of the ladle? Does it retain the din of Kli Rishon, or is it already a Kli Sheni, a second keli? If it's directly on the fire, l'chor, it's a Kli Rishon. Directly on the fire, you're just transferring, it's still hot. Nothing really happened, no real change occurred. Or maybe yes, it's a different vessel. If you removed it from the fire, well, you already removed it from the fire, you already cooled off a little bit, now you put a Kli. What difference does it make? What difference does it make, by the way, what the din of the matzeket is? A lot of nafkaminas. One nafkamina, one difference can be as follows. Do you know that if you have a bowl of soup, there may be an issue whether you can add croutons to it? Croutons? What's the problem of adding croutons to my soup on Shabbos? There is a halacha of yesh bishul achar afiyah. Ein bishul achar bishul, right? It's cooked. I can't cook it again. Unless it's mitztamek v'yafalo, you can get better. But anyway, yesh, according to some, afiyah achar bishul. Bishul achar afiyah. You can actually cook something even though it was baked. Because cooking and baking are two separate things. So you're going to put croutons in your soup, you're going to be cooking the croutons. No, the croutons are baked.
Pre-baked.
They're pre-baked. They're very baked.
They're
No,
not raw.
But even though they're baked, cooking is different than baking. You're not allowed to cook something that was baked. But the soup, is it hot enough to cook the croutons? The answer is no. Lemaisa, you can be lenient, even though there are some who are machmir. Now, why can you be lenient? Because by the time it comes into the soup is the bowl is for sure kli sheni. Kli sheni. There are a few items that can cook in a kli sheni, not croutons. Tea leaves, maybe. And when we talk about tea leaves, we'll talk about how delicate they are, and that's why you make tea differently on Shabbos. You don't use tea so easily. So croutons is going to be a problem? No, because by the time it reaches the pot, the soup bowl, supposedly it's a kli sheni. Now, for those who are machmir, I have some news to tell you. That ladle, it was already a kli sheni according to some, so by the time it hits your bowl, it's a kli shlishi. And kli shlishi is never going to cook anything almost. So you can have croutons in your soup bowl. So you see where matzeket, the ladle, can make a difference. How do you treat it? It could be an additional level of transfer of heat from the pot to the ladle to the bowl. Another situation is, well, let's say your cholent is drying up. This happens all the time.
So that's when you put the pot off the fires.
Yes.
But if the pot had remained
It's
fire,
a more of a
then
problem.
then
It's
the
a
continuation.
it's a continuation of the clearation that is ala age, right? Apparently, it's a continuation.
So.
Yeah, continuation. So another situation is your cholent is drying out. What do you do with your cholent? You wake up in the morning, you're about to go to shul. Oh no! By the time I come home, it's going to be burnt. You didn't put enough water, or you left it on high. Who knows what? There are various ways to deal with it. You can't add water from the sink, chas v'shalom. You can't cook. You make the whole cholent also if you do that. But you can add boiling water from your percolator, either by directly taking the percolator to the cholent, or by taking the pot underneath it and then putting it right back, which is what they do in yeshiva sometimes. Two boys come and hold the pot, bring it down they don't put it down, hold it underneath, open the faucet, add some more liquid, zoom,
and put it right back on the
put
fire.
it right back on the fire, on the covered fire. It has to be
On the
covered.
blech?
Yes, for sure. It has to be covered fire. You can never put something on an uncovered fire in Shabbos, no matter how much it was cooked. Marasayin,
There's seven that you can.
not on an uncovered fire.
You still
Not on
feel it,
uncovered.
it's not-
Right, not on the uncovered fire. Only covered fire.
You need the 7 conditions
Yes.
for blech?
Yes.
For blech you need the
For
7
blech,
conditions?
yeah, for blech you still need it. But if the fire is uncovered,
But on the blech I can put something from the refrigerator.
no, not always.
But I can sometimes. I don't need the 7
Not
conditions.
directly over where the flame is. Away from the flame, you can. Well, it's not going to be yatzei about this point. Okay, directly on the flame. That's one of the reasons why we have a blech. You can never put anything directly on the fire on Shabbos, even if it's fully cooked and hot, because of maris ayin only.
maris ayin.
It's only maris ayin. It's already fully cooked, but it's maris ayin. A blech is less of a problem. A blech serves for many purposes.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Does Friday also hold by shvus to shvus?
In what kind of a situation?
Because putting it on the plank, which is the Rabbana,
Okay.
and Amir al-Akum is also the
Right. There are situations that you could be make up for that.
tell
Yeah,
me
sure.
go ahead, put it on the blech?
Yeah, there may be a situation where you can. Yeah, that yes, because it's a shvus to shvus. Yes, there may be a situation because after all, I mean, it's not a real isser. Yeah, and if there's a tzorech, we sometimes allow
L'man
for it.
mitzvah
Yeah.
for people.
So now, the Chazon Ish, I believe, allows, if you don't have percolator close by, to take with a cup the hot water and pour it in directly. Even though that is not as hot, right? Still,
But there are those that say bishul after bishul by water.
by water, especially if it's still hot.
If it's-
Exactly.
Rama says as long as it's
Sure, if it's yad salat, for sure, not a problem. So the matzekes, right, even though it may be, actually with the matzekes, it's not going to make that much of a difference, because whether it's a kli rishon or a kli sheni, if it's still hot, you will be able to transfer over to the cholent.
Off the fire,
The cover on what?
back on the pot afterwards, you're gonna want that on.
You can only put the cover back, by the way, on cholent if it's fully cooked. If you forgot to put the lid on top, and now you want to do it, and it's not fully cooked, you're not allowed to do it. Because that speeds up the cooking
Right.
process.
So it's fully
Yeah.
cooked.
Yeah.
You'd have to put the cover on, right on.
What's the situation? You have
You don't put water in.
right. Then you put the cover back on. No problem. You can
Always
put,
on the side of the block.
yeah, anywhere. The cover you can always put back if the food is fully cooked. There's no problem putting the cover back. if it was there to begin with. So anyway, so I just gave you some quick Hilchos Shabbos here on matzekes, ladle, how sometimes it can make a difference depending if it's a Kli Rishon or Kli Sheni. But there's no doubt that Kli Rishon, even though you removed it from the fire, it has a tremendous koach, it has tremendous heat, as long as it's Yad Soledesbo. And you could have cooled off too. As long as it's still Yad Soledesbo, everybody understand what I mean by Yad Soledesbo? Yeah? It's still very hot. It has the koach of being maflit and mavliya. Even according to Rabbeinu Tam, by the way, the Rabbeinu Tam holds that a Kli Rishon which is not ala eish is not mevashel. I think he's the only one that says that. It has to be ala eish. Still, there's plita and bliya, there's something that happens, even if it's not on the fire. Something does happen. It may not be mevashelet, but still there's a bliya and plita. And, of course, all that was said so far is only for Yad Soledesbo. Once something cools off, even if it's ala eish, it's okay. And we've given this example various times. A pot is on the fire, right? You just turned on the flame. The balabost of the house comes with the wrong spoon. Melachik instead of flesh. Starts stirring. Oh no. Yeah, but it's not hot yet. Don't worry about it. You just put it on right now. So even though a pot is on the fire, if it's not Yad Soledesbo yet, you don't have to be worried about it. Nothing has happened yet. There's not enough heat to make the spoon usher or to make the pot or the food that's in the pot usher. So this is as far as Kli Rishon. What about Kli Sheni? We pass in Hilchos Shabbos, Kli Sheni is not mevashel. That's how we hold.
Taaruvot, same thing.
Yeah. But we will see that it does have blias and plitas. Or doesn't it? In other words, that's the question here. We hold that it doesn't, like Ilan just said, just like in Hilchos Shabbos it's not mevashel, in Hilchos Taaruvot there's no blias and plitas. Even if it's Yad Soledesbo, it's a Kli Sheni. And it's enough to have hadocha. Why? What happens in the Kli Sheni? Kli Sheni, the walls of the keli cool off the heat. That's the physics behind Kli Sheni. By the time you transfer the heat from, or the soup, or whatever it is, from one Kli into another, the walls of the Kli Sheni cool off the liquid, the tafshil. Especially liquid. I have to be careful not to say tafshil. You know why? Liquid cools off much faster than solids. We will talk about that next week. There's a difference between liquids and solids. A solid can retain its heat a lot longer. Just look at the potatoes of the cholent. It will retain its heat longer than liquid in a bowl of soup. It's just the physics, the nature of the heat. So I'm saying here, tafshil, but I mean liquid. The Kli Sheni, the walls of the keli will cool off the liquid, the roitiv. That's how most, and I said most poskim hold. There is a machlokes by Kli Sheni, especially I think the Rashba. Rashba holds that even though Kli Sheni is not mevashel, but there are blias and plita. I think he's one of the only ones. Most poskim hold Kli Sheni is not mevashel, no blias, no plitas. Yes.
Does that hold also for liquid and pot?
Yes. Yeah, it's the same thing. Same thing. Yeah. It maybe retains it a little bit better, maybe a little bit drop longer. Yeah. What I tell people to do, by the way, with tea. Whenever I'm in Israel, I tell people who have a problem, in Israel they want to have tea on Shabbos, so they prepare the essence. You know what the essence is? Oh, you gotta have tea, especially if you're Persian. You gotta have tea 5 times a day. Yeah. So tea. So they prepare the essence. Okay. What's the other way to do it? They don't know. Besides that. So why don't you have Nest tea? We have Nest Cafe. There's Nest tea. I use Nest tea. Take a spoonful of the powder and put it in. Oh, they'll tell you it's not the same. Well, whatever. Anyway, that's the other solution. Just use Nest tea. There's no problem. That Nest tea has been cooked already.
No, but it's really
Then you have a third possibility. You can use your tea bag in a kli shlish.
That's by those who hold the Eritza, which is distinguished from Sheni.
Yeah. You just take a cup, another cup, another cup. In other words, the irui, we're machmir. The irui itself that's pouring in, that's not the Kli Sheni necessarily. Pour it in, and I guarantee you that it cooled off considerably by the time we got to the third cup.
The Aruch HaShulchan very much like, because the Aruch HaShulchan says that changing the color of the water, which he does even in cold water, is crucial.
Just the coloring, right.
Just the coloring.
Just the coloring.
And therefore the using tea leaves or tea bags in cold water.
Colored water. It's colored water.
Yeah, so
like Kool-Aid, But anyway, we're lenient with that. You could use it in the Kli Shlishi, it's not a problem. Because it doesn't have enough heat to heat it up.
If it if it has enough heat to make steam,
Yeah.
then it's being cooked.
Then it's being cooked.
If it's,
Yeah.
if it's already so low that
Yeah.
you won't enjoy the tea anymore,
Yeah.
and it's not being cooked,
Yeah.
but it wants to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, so even according to the Rashba that it's mavliya and maflit in a klisheni, how much does it do it? It only does a kedei klipa. It doesn't do more than a klipa. And as we're going to soon see, the Mechaber brings down all the shitas. But before we go to the Mechaber, I did see that the Shach is machmir to require a klipa. And the Taz brings down the Yamshel Shloima that holds that although it's not maflit and mavliya as at once, it is mavliya or maflit, one or the other. And according to the Taz, it appears that he would render the whole thing aser, based on the Yamshel Shloima. In other words, not just a klipa. Let's see it inside first. Choim shel kli rishon sheyad soledes boy, the heat of a kli rishon that the yad is still soledes boy. Mevashel v'oiser kuloi. It answers the whole thing. Aval choim shel kli sheni eino mevashel. It does not cook. V'yeshomer shegam kin eino maflit v'lo mavliya at all. Nothing. V'yeshomer the mechol mokom umaflit umavliya. That's the Rashba. V'oiser kedei klipa. V'ro'u, the Mechaber says ro'u lochush lizor b'dover lechatchila. You have to really be careful lechatchila by klisheni. We're talking about Isurim right now, right? Not Hilchos Shabbos. Isurim ro'u lizor b'dover lechatchila. B'di'evet, we hold that it's not mevashel. But b'di'evet, muter b'loi klipa u'ba'docha be'al masagi. That's the Mechaber. And as we said, the Taz, the Shach, appear to either require a klipa or they are more machmir with that. What about irui? Irui is something in between kli rishon and kli sheni. Irui means to pour. And irui you'll see even in Hilchos Pesach, because we have a klal in Haggalah, keboloi kach poltoi. The same way a keli absorbs, that's the way it is spoiled. You use something with hot water, you can make Haggalah to it with the same heat. It was on the fire, you use Haggalah, right? Something that is not used over the fire, it's used in the sink. You could pour hot water in the sink. You have a stainless steel sink, you can pour hot boiling water from your kettle to cleanse it, or from the faucet itself. Because kebolei kach polto, for the most part, that's how it works to kasher something. The way it was used, that is how you kasher it. The oven is used with heat, you kasher it with heat, right? So irui is sometimes used to kasher, because that amount of heat is what was used there. There's a question if you can use irui. Some say you would be able to use irui if it was a kli rishon too, but it's really not the same. Irui is less than a kli rishon. Kli rishon is much hotter than irui, but irui, everybody agrees for the most part that it's mevashel kedei klipa. That is why when you have your cup of tea, you will notice people allow the water to come down first, and then they put the tea inside or the coffee, even though they're not required to do it because it's already cooked.
The coffee is.
The coffee, or the tea, not bags, the nest tea. It's cooked, roasted. You don't really need to do that. You don't have to put the sugar or the coffee, whatever was cooked, last. But it's better.
Well, sweetener.
The water, because the water coming down is irui, it's mevashel kedei klipa, but this thing that's there, the coffee, the Nescafe, is already cooked. Right. So it doesn't make that much of a difference, really, halacha l'maaseh. Some people, you just are careful, you allow the water to come down first, by then it's already somewhat of a klisheni, then you can put your coffee, your Nescafe, not Turkish coffee, by the way, but the Nescafe that is cooked, that you can put in. It's not really cooked. Yeah.
But the beans.
Yeah, it's not the same.
So
It's
what
not the
you
same.
can have on Shabbos?
You can't have Turkish coffee on Shabbos, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really miss it. Yeah, I know.
Why condition?
Yes, but it's not the same.
It doesn't matter.
Like klishi.
Yeah?
See, but tea is the same dish.
Kli is similar.
Ah.
I know. I had my question about that. Tea is similar, but it's so cold. Who would want to have such a cold tea anyway? Yeah. So irui is something in between kli rishon and kli sheni. There's a big machlokes rishonim what the status of irui is. Is it like kli rishon to be mavliya and to be maflit, or is the din more similar to kli sheni? So the Rashbam holds that it's like a kli sheni, and same thing with Rabbi Elyahu. And the Shach brings down that it's understood from the Marsham that irui is only mavliya or maflit kedei klipa, or it does not mavliya maflit ke'echot at once. But even even if you hold irui is mavliya maflit, it's only kedei klipa. Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri hold that irui is kekli rishon and it's mevashel. And we will see later on in the Siman, even though tatar, there's something called tatar govar, the one that's in the bottom is always stronger than the one that's coming on top, still, the irui is strong enough to be mevashel kedei kli. This is interesting because whenever you have a little bit of cold tea, you're going to be pouring hot water on it. You may be cooking the cold tea that remains in the cup. So it all depends how much cold tea. Because if you have a lot and you're going to be pouring a little bit, it's okay. Because tato govar. Tato govar is whatever is in the bottom is stronger than whatever is coming down. But if you have very little left, then what's coming down is going to cook it.
How do you have to worry also?
Yes, we spoke about that. Some people are machmir to wipe off the drops, drops that may still be on the glass that was used before that's still wet. Before they pour, they use irui on it.
I get with these foam cups. You just have to be fatigued with foam cup. There's still little drops remaining on the cup.
Yeah, sometimes.
Can you go to the urn or beef cup?
Yeah. Some people are machmir to, as I said, to dry the foam cup. Yeah.
It's something you would advise.
Well, we're not all machmir on that. No, for a few droplets, no. The Shach writes that it's understood from Binotanda, Iru is mavliya kedei klipo, but it's not mavliya bekuloi. So even though you do say that Iru is mavliya, it's only kedei klipo. That's how we pass him for the most part. When it comes to Irui, it does have enough heat to be mavliya into something kedei klipa. It penetrates kedei klipa, and that's all you would have to remove. It's not. It's in between kli rishon and kli sheni. Kli sheni we hold is not mevashel, and Iru is mevashel kedei klipa. And of course, this can make a difference. In other words, if you use it to kasher something, is it enough or not? And of course, if there was isurim involved too, if it came down as an irui versus being on the fire, all of this makes a difference. And that is why the Mechaber discusses here the various forms or various degrees of heat, what they do and what they can't do. So either they cook kedei klipa, or if it's a kli rishon, it's actually going to be like the real thing. It's going to cook completely, even though it's no longer on the fire. Or if it's a kli sheni, it won't really accomplish too much. But you have to be machmir. In a kli sheni by isurim, as the Mechaber says himself, yesh lochush by isurim. If somehow it's a kli sheni and somebody put some hot dogs in a tray for me, it sat in there. There's a tam that came out. Maybe like you were saying with tea, colors come out. Maybe some tam comes out with a kli sheni. We hold it doesn't. It's not mevashel, in other words, it's not even maflit, the tam. But by Yisurim, the Mechaber says yesh lachosh. Okay, we'll continue with Hashem next.